One. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Carlos Perez. Welcome to Nova Southeastern University College Psychology. Today we have a panel of faculty, alumni, and students, and we're going to be going through careers in psychology and counseling. One of the things that I find is that some of the best conversations is when I've had a number of colleagues gathering together, just maybe at a coffee table or having a little chat and talking about where they came from, what inspired them. So I've done a series of these events, and today I've invited some very special friends to tell us about themselves. So please go ahead and start. Pick on Dr. Caproni.
Oh boy. My name is Pete Caproni, and I've been a full-time faculty member at our College of Psychology School Psychology program for the past 10 years. Prior to that, I've worked in the field of clinical and school psychology for many years. Got my graduate degree in Adelphi in New York in 1989. But in terms of my roots, I come from both the sides of the Ohio River Valley, Ohio and Kentucky. And with my Italian-American background, I claim to be the only Italian-American hillbilly psychologist in the South Florida area. So that hasn't been challenged in the 32 years that I've been in this area. I'm very interested in a lot of different things that we'll be talking about today. But in particular, I'll be talking about our school psychology specialist and doctoral programs. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions that you guys might have about those.
I can jump in next. My name is Anna Owens, and I also am a full-time faculty in our clinical mental health program and school counseling program. So when I was hired in both of those roles. So it's been an interesting time for our clinical mental health program. We just had accreditation this summer, and it had been a very long process. So we just received our KCREP accreditation. And then on the school counseling side, something kind of fun that I get to do is I've recently, or I guess last year, became the practicum and internship placement coordinator for kind of the Tri-County and then some miscellaneous placements throughout the state. And I really like working with our practicum and internship students because, you know, they're seeing the light at the tunnel, but it's still a really big process that they have to get through. And it's an exciting time in their career. And so I'll definitely talk a little bit more about, you know, what I've been seeing happening in our school districts. There's a school counselor shortage. We know there's concerns about mental health in schools. And so just a lot's been happening there with our K through 12 students.
I'll jump in. My name's Laurie Moldovan. I am a graduate of Nova 2018, I believe it was. And I was in the 3-year program offsite on the Miami campus. And I have had a windy path to become a therapist, and I started in banking after law school. So if you see the JD, that's what you see down there. I knew this was not my path. It was sort of an encouragement from family members and culture. So I actually went into college pre-med. I came out pre-law. And I went into banking, and then I did a whole bunch of other things. And then one day somebody said to me that knows me very well, said, you know, you'd be a good therapist. I said, I'm 53. What do you think? And it turned out that my law practice supervisors were retiring soon. I said, I better get my next career in order. And so that's how I got to join Nova. It was fantastic. I had a great experience. We'll talk more about it from the student side if you're interested. I'm currently a licensed mental health counselor, and I just started a new job doing employee assistance programs, 100% online. So I feel really happy about that. And we'll talk more, I'm sure, along the hour. And handing it over.
So next, my name is Patrice Leopold. I'm a full-time faculty in the department of the College of Psychology, but in the Department of Clinical Mental Health Counseling. I'm born and raised in South Florida to Haitian immigrant parents. So I've always been in Florida. I've always been in South Florida. Up until time for college, I did my undergrad at University of Florida and my master's in Family, Youth, and Community Sciences. That was my bachelor's. And then my master's was in Marriage and Family Counseling at University of Central Florida, and then back to University of Florida for my degree in counseling and counseling education. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and just to kind of tell you all the credentials, which is the LMHC, and the NCC is the National Certified Counselor. So a lot of my work is in couples and families. That's a lot of where my research interest lies. I'm definitely excited about this opportunity to talk to you all about. I just remember being a student and just being curious about, what are the next steps, right? Where do I go from here? And just not having the information or a frame of reference because, I didn't know other people who were doing what I was doing or who was in the fields interested in counseling. So to kind of take that leap of faith to get into the field is something that was exciting for me, and I'm definitely excited for you all to be curious about these things, and I'm excited to share. So welcome.
Alrighty, and my name is Kayla Schrickle. I am a fourth year student in the Clinical Psychology PsyD program. I'm currently in the process of applying to internship, which is very stressful. I've completed my clinical competency exam and my directed study, which is the capstone research project for PsyD students. My directed study actually surrounded the topic of intergenerational transmission of intimate partner violence on child witnesses. So that's a topic I'm very interested in. I did come into this program directly after my bachelor's degree. During my undergraduate, I double majored in psychology and criminology at the University of South Florida. During that time, I worked as a registered behavior technician. Overall, I have a very general training background and general clinical interests. I enjoy working with individuals of all ages and in all different formats. I have a lot of experience doing neurodiagnostic and developmental testing. My first practicum rotation took place at a developmental assessment clinic. So I was mainly diagnosing children and adolescents with autism and developmental disabilities. I also did a group therapy with college students who had autism spectrum disorder. My second practicum rotation, I was at a clinic called the Family Violence Program. So I was working with adults who were going through a lot of interpersonal difficulties, had some exposure to domestic violence and working with clients with those types of issues. And currently I'm working with couples in an online format and love doing that as well. So very excited to speak with you guys and to answer any questions that you might have. So welcome.
Thank you all very much for your presentations. Remember, feel free to interject, but I want to start off by asking a question because, we all have someone special that touched our lives. And I was hoping maybe you could take a moment to recall and tell us a little bit about a mentor who assisted you, someone that's served as a mentor, inspired you, and first one that comes to mind. Go ahead, jump in.
I'm going to jump in because it happens to be a NOVA professor. So the NOVA professor that taught our internship and practicum and internship year, Dr. Elda Kansky-Veloso, she's usually on the Miami campus, but perhaps you all know, I don't know, she might be at Davie as well. She is a petite bundle of dynamic energy. And she came into our class and I just felt like I am going to be challenged and I'm going to learn from this woman. And I had problems with my practicum and internship placement. And I would just call her and say, you're not going to believe this. Another one fell through. And I remember the third time it fell through, she came in and she took her cell phone out. And she starts dialing people. She goes, she's calling you tomorrow and you better give her something. And so that's how I got my practicum and internship placement. And it was great. And I worked with the adolescents, which I never thought I would. I was going in a different direction, had a great time. And I was telling the panel before, I participated in Dr. Veloso's research with the veterans, which was profoundly moving. And the next year, even after graduation, I asked her if I could participate in the next round. And she even allowed me to create my portion and my contribution to the project, which was really meaningful to me. She also supported me while I was able to publish an article in a journal within the field. And she also encouraged me to attend with Carlos, helped me go to the American Counseling Association conference. And she also supported me while to put together a poster presentation for the year after the American Counseling Association conference, which was, I could not believe, there I was with 4 professors from Nova, and they had all signed on to support me. And I did my presentation, and I couldn't believe that could happen to someone like me, just, regular person. So, and finally, all throughout my registered internship after graduation, she served as my backup supervisor because my supervisor is elderly, and just in case she had medical issues, she supported me in that way. And I was telling the panel after the Surfside tragedy, I had a potential referral for my private practice. And I called Dr. Veloso, like, what am I going to do? What should I hit? What are the points? And she jumped right in. And I'm so grateful. And I never, if you reach out as a student, and I forgot to thank you for joining us today. If you have these opportunities at Nova that I couldn't imagine would ever happen. And I've made a friend and a colleague and a mentor, and she still remains that to this day. I'm so grateful. So that's my story.
Yeah, I have to give it 2 cents too, because in a different capacity, she was working in a different college, and she helped me when I was finishing my dissertation. She jumped in, she like rolled up her sleeves, and she's like, "Oh, we're gonna do this." And it's really about people getting stuff like that done, and that's beautiful.
Yes.
I just saw a question come in about how does one acquire a mentor, and I think my story I'd like to tell kind of addresses that along with another point that I think is very important, and that is that if you're thinking of getting into this field, it's always good to get your feet wet first, to do some volunteering or do some work in some capacity that relates to mental health. So the story I'm going to tell you is about a guy by the name of Dan Cox. He was a senior at Xavier, where I was a freshman, and we were both in the psychology program. We were both psychology majors. I'm kind of halfway psychology major. I wasn't really sure at that point. So Dan comes to me about halfway through the year and he says, would you like to volunteer at Longview State Hospital adolescent unit, which was the state psychiatric facility in Cincinnati? And I said, sure, let's give it a try. Well, that got me hooked on mental health and being a psychologist. So today, Dan Cox, he's Dr. Dan Cox. He's in the psychiatry department at the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. And I thank you, Dan, for having turned me in the right direction. So the bottom line, I think, is that if you're thinking about this field, try to get some experience, either volunteer or paid, to really get a sense as to whether it's for you.
Right. I'll move on to a different question. You could always go back if you want, if something comes to mind. Tell us a little bit about what has been a career highlight for you. I'm going to pick on. No, go ahead, Dr. Leopold.
You said what's been a career highlight?
Correct.
Okay. I would say for me, it's being able to be in a position to support, other students or other people who are in a similar trajectory, right? Meaning that they're going to, within the field or exploring and asking questions, and I'm being able to see them, rise to the occasion. So for me, I've had a student who I was able to advise and give support to when I was a doc student. They were a master's student, and they're now about to graduate soon. So being able to kind of see them go through the steps and support them along the way, and being able to, see them accomplish their goals, I think is something that's pretty rewarding, and be able to give back in that capacity. Because, as we mentioned before with the question, being able to have a frame of reference and have a mentor to look up to, and then be able to give that back is something that's pretty valuable. So for me, that's been a highlight, is being able to kind of see students finish, go through the finish line, right? And navigate some of those growth fostering aspects that's a part of, being a clinician. So a lot of that is personal and professional, right? I always would tell people when I was going through the counseling program, I felt like I was going through my own counseling, because a lot of it is, exploring your truths and your realities, along with learning the curriculum and learning, the material. So being able to see someone grow, again, both personally and professionally through that, is something that was pretty rewarding for me.
I think a highlight for me has been being able to kind of surpass these requirements in the program that I was like so worried about and so anxious about when I first got into the program. So specifically the clinical competency exam, I think that's something you do the beginning of your fourth year. And when you're a first year, you can like feel the anxiety in the building of the people that are doing their clinical competency exam. And I remember as a first year being like, oh my gosh, like I don't even want to think about that yet. Like I'll be prepared when I get there. And then as the years went on, I mean, obviously I had to start thinking about it more, but I think getting to that point and being able to be like, okay, I actually am prepared for this. Like my training has over prepared me for this requirement. I think being able to pass that and kind of being able to like move on to internship and all of that has definitely been like such a highlight for me.
Yeah, I picked on Kayla for that because I've been able to observe where she was and where she is now, and she's so ready to go, and I love it.
I think one of the highlights for me is that I was in community mental health for several years, and boy, do you see things you never, you didn't think you were prepared for. And to know that, I can make an impact with clients that are really struggling was deeply meaningful. And I was talking to the panel earlier about being able to get consultation or support from other practitioners and professionals and experts coming from the field of law and going to law school, or people would rip out pages of books in the library. And here you can just reach out. I reached out to somebody through Psychology Today who was familiar with DID, which is when you have multiple personalities. I had a client that did, and I did not have any specialty in that. And she just gave of her time freely. I couldn't believe it. It was so kind. So that to me is a big highlight,
I would have to say the 23 years that I had the privilege of serving as a school psychologist with Dade County Public Schools was full of wonderful friendships that continue to this day, wonderful growth experiences as a psychologist, and just so many kids and families that were able to transcend difficult circumstances and develop resilience and to move forward in their lives. It was actually a very hard place to leave when I got the offer to come to Nova, but at the age of 59, by the way. So that's, for those of you who are thinking about mid-career or midlife career changes, it's possible, it's doable, and it can be very fulfilling if you make the right move. In the schools were tremendous in terms of forming me and giving me a sense of optimism and hope for what people can achieve when they get the right kind of support.
Yeah, I
And that's
wonder,
good. Okay, I'm sorry.
there's in the field of school psychology, I've just observed there's so many very positive individuals, and a lot of people have never heard of school psychology, never even considered it, and it's now more and more a critical shortage, very much like school counseling. Um, what is it about this career that there's so many positive folks? What do you do?
You know, I think it's because we're in a situation where the kids are. We're able to work with them right when things happen. If a kid gets bullied or a kid has a learning problem, we're there. We're right there on the scene, and we can do something about it, working with them and their families. And that, I think, is just a huge, huge kind of advantage.
Tell your friends. Laurie, I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was going to add on to what Dr. Caproni said was, I started at 53 and I had never had a psychology class in my life. So it just goes to show you that you can have a meaningful change of your career at any time. And one of the things I really appreciate about Nova was that the formats of learning were, if you were working, there was a program on the weekends, which is what I participated in. If you want to be on campus and do it the traditional way, that's great. You want to do a hybrid, great. You want to do it online, great. You want to do it on our different campuses, great. You know, I found it so flexible and supportive of achieving whatever you were seeking to do. So yeah, I really appreciated that.
You know, I want to take a little break from some of the very academic questions and career questions, because to me, it's a work-life balance. And you, especially Laurie, you must be taking in a lot. Kayla, I know you're dealing with clients in several different capacities. How do you de-stress from your career? What do you self-care? What do you do? I know I go hiking. I jump on a plane, go somewhere really far, and just disconnect. What do you all do?
That's a great question, and particularly complicated by COVID, because I was the first person in my agency to stay home because I had an underlying issue. And so I was shamed for it, which was a little disturbing. And so it was hard to have self-care when I was working about 72 hours a week, no joke, with notes and things like that. And studying for my exam. And so it was really hard, Carlos, to turn off. You know, it's really and so important. So what I did during lockdown, I found, and I just sent this into a conference I'm attending tomorrow. This was it. You know, this was my connection to the world, and FaceTime and friends and photographs and, you know, walking outside sometimes, but not even that often. That's the self-care was reading books, you know, or I didn't even get to, I still didn't do Netflix. I didn't have time, but, you know, just trying, or sleeping, you know, getting a nap in here and there if somebody canceled. That was really, it was a hard time, honestly, but it's a great question. And especially in our field, whatever profession you've gone into, self-care is key.
For me,
that is real.
For me, I really take a lot of comfort in like my nightly shower. So like when I am done with clients and with homework and with all of my things, my shower is like my internal cue that like I am done, you know, like I am unplugging, I am going to sit on the couch and either read a book or watch my TV show. So whenever I need to like unwind, I'm like, okay, it's time to take a shower, time to close all of this, like I'm done for the day kind of a thing. I also just have like my TV shows that I look forward to like at the end of every day, basically. So that's nice. And then I recently actually got a kitten who I thought would de-stress me for like internship app season, but actually she has not been letting me sleep at all. So that backfired.
You know, something interesting as far as, you know, self-care, and this is a little bit academic, but really going to conferences, and I guess that might sound a little But I get so energized from going to them. I feel like even though I am a professional, but I love still learning and engaging in that way. And conferences are fun. And so because of COVID, those had kind of stopped, or we had a lot of virtual conferences. But I just got back from one this past weekend, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt so energized. I had a lot of new resources and best practices to kind of bring back to my students. A lot of conferences now have apps. So if I couldn't go to a specific presentation or topic, I could still download all the resources. So that's kind of a newer, I think even more so because of COVID, kind of the technology piece has been pushed forward because we had to. And so I wasn't able to attend all 3 days of the conference. And there was a lot of, information and topics that I missed, but I was still able to kind of garnish that information and PDFs and resources. And then I turn around and I share them with my students. So I always give them a recap. And kind of tailing back a question or two about the mentorship piece is I've had great mentors, and I definitely encourage students to kind of seek out that relationship. It is a little bit of a two-way street sometimes, right? We kind of have to put ourselves out there, especially if you're in an online program. I just had an advising meeting with some of my online students, and they were in their first semester, and they're like, how do we make some of those connections? It's like, you got to just put yourself out there because it is easier to kind of go unnoticed in online programs. And I remind students that you're going to get out what you put in, right? And so take this time to really learn and grow as an individual, but also as a professional as well. But yeah, conferences, even though that's not a self-care so much, but just getting to see new ideas, new concepts, and then also running into old colleagues and friends and things like that. So I really enjoyed myself. And even though I woke up early in the morning to drive to Tampa, and then I presented that afternoon, but at the end of the day, I had a nice dinner with some friends. And so that kind of made the scramble of it, turn into a little bit of a self-care piece as well. So you can multitask with your self-care.
We had a question pop up from David. This is an individual that is probably working full-time, and they're looking at doctoral programs, PhD in clinical psychology. In clinical psychology, I think there's very few, if any, right now that are online programs. They're residential, and the field has chosen to go in that direction. What are your thoughts? What do you think their options are to get into an accredited APA program? And our counseling program is also accredited, and the school psychology program is accredited by APA. The doctoral program and the specialist program is NASP approved. What do you think they should do?
There are some non-traditional programs that do grant a PhD. It could be problematic in terms of how that plays with licensure in a particular state. So it depends on what your goals are. But I would look at something like the Union Graduate School, if I'm using the right term. I know they've renamed themselves. It's probably one of the oldest non-traditional programs out there that grants a non-residential PhD that can be in an area of psychology.
They're going, if it's not accredited, it's going to be a challenge. It's likely to be a challenge person.
But if you have another degree where you are credentialed, or you're you could be, for example, licensed school psychologist with a specialist degree, then many people do get the non-traditional degree, and they're still able to practice with their other certification or licensure.
So as you all know, we do offer a PsyD and a PhD. A PhD is usually going to have a comprehensive dissertation. Another thing to consider would be counseling with a mental health concentration, and then later on consider a counselor educator. And actually, I teach in the College of Education doctoral program in human services. So I get quite a few students that are mental health counseling students. So it's not going to be testing and evaluation like a clinical psychology degree or even school psychology degree might do, but there are other options. Now, if that's what you want to do, and you're sure that's what you want to do, you may want to consider adjusting your life to fulfill what you want to do. And only you could decide that.
Mhm.
Any other suggestions for this gentleman?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of jumping off what you said. I was thinking potentially doing an online program in mental health counseling or something like that, getting in the field, getting licensed that way. And then once, maybe down the road, if you do have an option to kind of quit your job or work not full time, then kind of getting into the PhD or the PsyD in clinical psychology. But at the end of the day, I mean, a PhD is a lot of work. Here we go. He responded.
So as we could also chat with him individually, so we give everybody opportunities. I want to give you an idea of another question. And this could get competitive. What do you think makes psychology or counseling unique? And just to really throw it in, I love to challenge people because I love to see people argue about which one is the best. So you've got counseling, family therapy, social work in the state of Florida have similar licenses. And then psychology you must have a doctorate to, but what's the best discipline? School psych?
I
don't think that's a
the
very
issue
fair question.
I think it's a great question. But I think my answer to it is that there's going to be a different answer for every person. And I think it's a goodness of fit. As David was saying earlier on, a residential full-time program for 4 years may not fit the bill for him. But there are other areas of, there are other ways to get into the mental health field that could fit the bill for you. For example, you can be a licensed school psychologist in the state of Florida and I think 9 other states without a doctorate. It's a non-licensed credential that's similar to what you get as a licensed mental health counselor. And that can allow you to do private practice, within the school psychology area. So it really depends on what your life circumstances are, what your goals are, and what you want to. Oftentimes people ask me about our 2 school psych programs. We have a specialist level and a doctoral level. And, the natural thinking is that doctorate is best. Well, that's not always the case because at the doctoral level, you have to quit your job. You have to go full time. Specialists can have a full-time job and a family and complete that degree. So for one person, that could be much better than the doctoral level.
And I'm going to jump in on the master's level. So Carlos, I'm going to negate what you were asking because in my experience, the social work, marriage and family therapy, and mental health counselor in the day-to-day world, agents, community mental health, where I am now in a corporation has all been, is all treated the same. We get free flow of the same clients. They don't seem to have a preference for maybe, I don't know if maybe they don't fully grasp the difference in our educational paths. But there's really, and the master's level, from what I've seen and what I hear from friends and colleagues, there's really no difference as far as once you're all licensed about the type of clients that we take in. Or the compensation.
One individual asked to compare the PsyD to the PhD and the DSW, and Kayla gave some nice detail there. DSW would be Doctor of Social Work. So usually in counseling and therapy and social work, an individual would pursue a doctorate because they want to do research, consulting, or teaching at a university setting. And that is actually very real. Obviously, 4 of the 6 of us work in a university setting, and there is work in higher education. So that's usually one of the reasons. So Dr. Owens, you did what was your PhD in?
Counselor education and supervision. So my program really preps you, right? Prepares you to be a counselor educator. However, there were individuals in my program that decided to just develop their private practice, and they are working, as Laurie was saying, and just focus on private practice, and maybe adjunct one course or something like that, but just to keep their feet wet, but did not become counselor educators. So I think, and even at the master's level, I think there's just so much variety for what you can do. And it's really, in all of these professions, you really can take it where you want it. And it looks different. Like I had a friend who was clinical social worker, and she sort of, got burnt out in that position. And now she does placement coordination all over the United States for really large treatment facilities all over the United States. So that is a role that she has taken on. But of course, she has that mental health background, but really loves this different career path. So it really can lead you in different directions. And I think that's kind of the unique thing about this career, is it's always evolving. I always tell my students as well that, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, right? And so even though you're in this career, that it still can change and evolve. And I think that's what keeps it exciting, at least for me anyways.
As our guests are considering some of these things, realize that you're not going to solve your path, find your exact path in 1 hour session. You've got to interview people, talk to numerous schools, talk to faculty, talk to people in the field right now. And the more information you have, then you get to choose which direction you want. What made you choose your direction? Any volunteers?
I can speak a little bit to my my direction, and then I just saw a comment. I apologize, I was having some technical issues, so I can't read all the comments as well. But someone was asking about the financial compensation, and obviously I teach graduate level students. A lot of them want to go into private practice, and so I think that's an important thing that they don't necessarily teach you in grad school, but many clinicians are, see themselves in that role. And same thing, I would definitely, I think the financial compensation is really how you set yourself up. I definitely believe you need the clinical skills and your reputation, but building that network, and that network starts now, right? So Carlos was saying, interviewing faculty or professionals in the field. So you want that network, because in my opinion, there's no better referral than from another mental health professional, right? So I get calls constantly. I have a very small private practice, so I don't take very many clients on. And so I refer to trusted therapists in the area, and 9 out of 10 times they'll go to that referral, right? So definitely building that network, and kind of being a little bit tech savvy. You need to be able to create that online presence, because that's how people are going to find you. Some of the practitioners that I know that are very successful have very successful online presence. So that's in their social media, blogging, things like that. So I definitely think that's a way. So as far as the financial compensation, I think some, individuals in the community might say, oh, well, you're Dr. So-and-so. Rather, they don't typically understand what the licensures and the credentials are, which you can explain to them, of course, if they're a client of yours. But really, so there could be, but I know individuals with a master's degree who charge, upwards of $150 to $200 an hour. So I think with that financial compensation, it's really how you kind of pivot yourself within your community. So that can be, interesting in how that unfolds for you. And Carlos, I kind of forgot or shifted away from your question, so I apologize.
I don't remember my question.
I don't either. I saw something come up in the chat, and I was going to try to answer both, but I think I just answered the financial compensation part.
Well, I was excited because I was reading a chat with a person who's chimed in from the Philippines, and that to me that's exciting. I was actually in Manila in January, just before the pandemic hit, and I love the country. I love Asia in general. I love going to visit these areas. And actually all the islands around the Philippines are amazing, but we're not here about my travels. And
Self-care, Carlos, self-care.
this young lady was talking about a degree. So we normally refer to the graduate degrees in the United States. So that's a master's or a PhD, and sometimes they're combined in these disciplines. Does somebody need a bachelor's in psychology? So in clinical psychology, you really should have a bachelor's in psychology. If you're coming in from another country, you would have your credential evaluated from an independent evaluator, and we could help you with those details. If you, for information on the detail of your process, I'm gonna put an email in the chat. But I just wanted to say, recognize, I love it when people come in internationally for these sessions. And I personally, I sit on the university's international council, and I think that there's a great spirit to a university that has international students and a very diverse population. It just builds our character.
Carlos, if I could jump in a minute on the Philippines question. For our doctoral program in school psychology, you do not need a bachelor's degree in psychology, but it is required that you have 5 courses in psychology. And if you look at our materials, they'll tell you which ones, that are required.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yeah, for the program, you only need 18 credits of psychology. So a bachelor's is actually not necessary.
And for the master's program, I had not had one psychology class, so no.
Well, actually, mental health counselors come in from many different walks of life.
Very true. I used to be a realtor before I was before I got into this profession and field. I still am a licensed realtor. So see, so many different things that you can sort of throw into the wheelhouse there. And I use my clinical skills in psychology when working with those clients as well.
I just saw a question about what are some good startup job positions for a mental health counselor student whose work background is different. So that was me. I came from banking and law. And so I think what we were talking about earlier, there's so many options. A lot of times what happens is when you are in your practicum and internship in your last year, and again, I was in a 3-year program, so it's probably different when you go straight through, but sometimes you fall in love with your internship site, and it's in a place, and it's in something you never thought you would do. So, I was exposed to community mental health, didn't know it existed. I also, agency work, different kinds of agencies. I worked with veterans. I worked, all different kinds you can work with in the legal system. So sometimes from your practicum and internship, and even if you don't take yours, by the site that you are given at NOVA, the packet is so variable. So you can see what is possible. So there's so many choices within what you can see your colleagues are doing, or what is connected to the school that you might not have thought of. So I had friends in a hospital setting in my cohort. Let's see, hospital, community mental health. I think some agencies. I'm looking up because I was thinking. It's a great question, and more choices than you can imagine, really. Addiction centers, I saw that. Yeah, that too.
It is kind of tough to get in, as a starting person. And Kayla's comment is a real good one. One of my students had volunteered for a crisis hotline before she came in as a school psychology doctoral student. And boy, she keeps referring back to her experiences there as being so valuable. So again, volunteer kind of work in any way connected to mental health can be a real good thing. Or if you're interested in school psychology, working in any capacity really in the school system where you have experience with, working with kids, perhaps as an aide, or running an after-school program or something like that.
Yeah, you can always find positions as aftercare in schools and it's as substitute teachers, right? So that if you want to work with children or in the school setting, those are great things. I actually became a school substitute during my practicum and internship, and would pick up, days that I wasn't working in the school. I knew where I wanted to be and what areas, so I would just substitute teach. And I felt like that gave me some good experience because I was not a previous teacher, where, sometimes in school counseling or school psychology, that might be a teacher going back to school and getting their master's degree. But I didn't have that background. And I felt like being a sub for a year and a half was very helpful.
And there are some programs such as residential programs and inpatient units that or hospitals that offer like a behavior techs. So they're like people who are just like monitoring the clients while they're on site. So you could kind of shadow a clinician and seeing what they're doing. They sometimes have behavior techs help out with group dynamic, like group counseling and things of that sort. So residential programs for substance abuse, as well as inpatient units, which does like the Baker Acts and stuff like that, or detox. They have behavior techs as well, where you can kind of be hands-on with the clients and work with them in their day-to-day activities throughout the day, since they're there for 24 hours, 24 hours and ongoing.
So go ahead, Laurie.
Oh, I was going to throw out we were talking before the formal panel began, and we were talking about diversity, equality, inclusion, and broadening programs, and how that factors into our educational experience in grad school and out in the community and within NOVA. And Dr. Caproni was giving some really interesting feedback on that.
Yeah, just to share real quickly, NOVA has a real emphasis on community engagement and community service. And just this past month, I did 2 workshops, one for a military branch, one for a large worldwide corporation, on things like work-study balance, self-care, how to access mental health services when you need them. And so I think there's, again, areas of mental health service provision that you may not even think about that become open to us as folks become more tuned into the fact that mental health services are not just when you have a severe mental health crisis, but they can also be part of a more growth-oriented model that all of us can benefit from.
Okay, we have a little bit of quiet time here. If you can help me with any questions that are coming in, but I wanted to ask you one last question. What is your favorite part about your current role, where you are now? Don't all jump at once. As you're thinking, I'm gonna say my job is different every day. I love the students that work with me, and actually last night I got to go with some of our student leaders to a little dinner we had, and getting to know them and see all the brightness that they have and all the potential that they have is really exciting. I say that sincerely. I've been at NSU almost 20 years, and I get to see alumni as they move on, and it's really inspiring when you see that they've got a full career, they've gone, and now they're professors at a university, or they're running a very successful counseling center in DC, in the nation's capital, or they've just published a major piece. There's some really exciting work out there with our graduates.
For me, I'm going to jump in, Carlos, because I just changed jobs, and I'm so grateful for working in a national corporation. I didn't really think about that. And working in a different field of employee assistance programs. We have the company I work for that I appreciate so much is we have a lot of teamwork, which we had talked about prior to the panel going live, which I appreciate because that hasn't always been my experience in other fields. Also, and this is important, I think, to be compensated and valued as what we do, which is very, very difficult sometimes. We see a lot of, challenging things in life, and it's hard. And to, go from, I to have a living wage and benefits. It's my first benefit since 1994. And so this is very meaningful to me, to be valued for the education and the experience and what I can bring to others and help them, in what they're facing. That's important to me. I appreciate that. So, and the ability to keep learning and growing and professional development.
So somebody asked about how to become a certified behavior technician. Well, in our counseling program, we do offer a concentration in applied behavior analysis. And that is to become either is it an assistant or a full behavior analyst. I can't recall what the official is. The great
full. My friend did it. I think it's full.
Yeah. And it's actually a great area to pursue. It's sought after. There's some nice compensation out there. So it's kind of a hot area, behavior analysts.
Yeah.
As we're about 9 minutes out from the hour, and I want to just give you an opportunity to think about a parting thought or a suggestion. There's still about 70 people that are signed on, and we've had a well over 100 come in and out. And they're making decisions. And what kind of advice, career, do you have suggestions for prospective students, for individuals? Everything from how to approach graduate school to the broad thinking of planning your career. If you can all give just a little bit of a suggestion, and we could go around the room.
Yeah, go ahead, Kayla.
For me, just what comes to mind is take it one day at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself kind of looking into too much at once. If you notice that you're starting to get overwhelmed, go take a shower, go do what you got to do to unwind and kind of relax. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I think when I was in undergrad, I was looking at so many different options and so many different paths I could potentially go that I would tend to overwhelm myself a lot. So for me, my main advice is just follow your heart and just don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I saw, it seemed like we had some high schoolers as well, which I think that's awesome. I was a middle and high school counselor. And when I kind of merged out of that, in private practice, I see adolescents and young adults, right? Really that 15 to 25. And I love that age range because there's so many transitions, right? There's so many transitions happening in your personal and your professional lives and in these choices that we're making. And so I really like to be a part of that process and helping young people sort of flush out. But this is what I always say to young people when I work with them is that's the excitement piece, is that you have the decision. You're going to have the choices that you can make. And, someone like me or other mental health professionals can help guide you. But ultimately, the choice is yours. And I think that can be a little bit scary and daunting on one side, and certainly not taking on, more than you can handle. But I think that's the exciting part of it, is that you have so many choices in front of you, and start to do a little research and see what excites you and what areas of practice that you really can see the longevity. Think about what populations you would like to work with. So is that with youth? Is that with veterans? What kind of inspires you? And everyone's path is going to be a little bit different. But really looking into that and definitely getting involved in your community. I think that's what young people can do now, right? If you're in high school, or maybe you're in your undergrad degree right now, and you're kind of looking at what are those next steps, is getting involved in your community. See what those community resources are, right? I don't know what they are for the whole state of Florida, but I do know in my area. And so I think getting involved in those resources, and whether that's attending a lecture like this, right? So you're already sort of one step ahead of maybe some others, because right now you're taking that time for yourself. This can be considered educational, but also self-care, right? This might help alleviate some stress for you because, hey, you've learned about some different ideas or options that are specific to, what steps you want to take in career choices. So round of applause for everybody who joined us today. And balls in your court, right? You really get to make those choices, and it can be a very exciting process.
I'll go next. I would say that I'm sorry, Laurie, did you want to go? No. But I would say that all of our experiences and how we came to the point of where we are today all looks different, right? There's no copy and pasted story or timeline or experiences or even majors or degrees for any of us, right? So it will look different. All of our paths are unique. So just as Dr. Owens was mentioning, do your research for each particular program that you're interested in. What are some of the requirements? It will look different from, some of us represent counseling versus psychology. It looks different for both programs. And seeing, how long the program is, and, just doing some of that research helps to see what fits for you, because it looks different. There is no, we could give you all suggestions for a lot of, your career paths, because I see a lot of the questions here speak to, what should I do for, this is my particular experience, but, it all depends on what you're looking for and why you're trying to do what you're doing, what's your timeline. There's so many different responses we could give. It just depends, right, on what you're looking for, what you're seeking, what's your ultimate end goal, and and that could help, guide you in your research, right? So definitely look into what's out there. What are the program requirements from program to program, and just being sure that you're aware of those things, and it'll help to guide you throughout the process.
And
you are in a good place by being here.
Absolutely. I guess I would add that in case, even if you go in a path that turns out not to be the one you really are drawn to after a while, I'm here to tell you, you can switch. And everything, what I learned was that everything I did before contributes to what I'm doing now. And so there's no loss of time. There's no loss of education. There's no loss of experience, because that's what makes me when I come into my therapy room, right? So like the professors are saying, and I love what Kayla said too. Yes, do your research. Also see what it looks like on the ground, because sometimes on paper or on a website, it looks like, yes, this is me. But when you see what a person actually does in that field, you can call and do informational interviews. See what a person in that field really does on a given day. And maybe that looks a little different than you thought or would be of value to you.
I have to go, but thank you so much, everyone. This was great. It was great meeting you all.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Anyone else wanted to give a last word? And as panelists, as you're still in with us, if you could flip through and if you notice anyone in the chat that didn't get a response, Kayla was good enough to be commenting as we were going on.
There is a question from Tamara that I can give part answer to, and that is that we do have a campus in Clearwater where our specialist program and school psychologist is offered, as well as I think some of our master's programs. Patrice and Anna, am I correct on that?
Yes, we have a counseling program that has a Tampa. Is it a weekend course, Dr. Owens?
Yeah, so we have Tampa, Orlando, Miami, Davie, and I believe, I know our counseling program there was a small campus in West Palm, but I feel like it might have kind of closed during this transition period. I'm not 100% sure. I teach mainly out of the Davie campus, so our primary campus.
Well, I'm going to hit one question here. PsyD is very well respected, and one of the things that I find that our setting for clinical psychology, and even we'll add school psychology in, is that our individuals that are PsyDs, they understand research, they're very focused on practice. We have a lot of practical experience in the degree. And then our PhDs, they know how to do this as well. So there are some arguments that sometimes the PhDs might not be as grounded. So if you're a researcher, do you know how to talk to clients? So as far as the data on who's more effective, I think you want to look at outcomes on a national level. And this idea is really was maybe not the traditional PhD that you saw 100 years ago, but education's changed. One of the biggest changes is access. We see that college campuses have been slowly becoming more and more diverse, where we see in other countries, just because I enjoy travel as well, there's not so many different options and opportunities. And I think that's, we sometimes bash the system that we're in, but the American system really has more opportunities and more options than any other place in the world. And you could go to private, you could go to public, you could go for funded programs, you could go for programs where you're taking loans and maybe getting loan forgiveness. There's many different options out there. And so I would be really cautious and I would listen to maybe mentors, people in the field, and get some good advice. Mm-hmm. Any other things that I missed? I want to close off within the hour because that's our usual schedule. But if you have any other thoughts that you want to share, if not, say goodbye.
Thanks, Carlos.
Thank you all. Yeah, thank you.
Well, it's been such a pleasure to have all of you. And Laurie, I haven't seen you in a while. And Dr. Leopold, it's really great to see you. I haven't seen you in a few days. I know you've been very busy teaching, so I look forward to seeing you. I hope you're going to ACA and your office is right there, so we'll get to see you soon. As far as our students that are attending, that attended this panel, next Friday we have an open house. I encourage you to come to that. It's a more formal structure where you're going to be hearing presentations. This is more an informal chat where I want people to be comfortable and hear different perspectives. The other thing is, this is just the beginning. You can have an individual consult with a current graduate student or an advisor. And so I just posted the contact information. Grad school at nova.edu. It doesn't matter what year you're in, what your background is. We'll work with you to try to understand what's the best thing for you. And then again, the open house is next Friday on November 12th. And you can see that at nova.edu Shark Chats.
Take care. It was so nice to chat with everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.